Guns Akimbo, action comedy starring Daniel Radcliffe and Samara Weaving, has just been released online. Now, I want to start with Daniel Radcliffe, who most of us associate with Harry Potter. He's an incredibly interesting case of an actor who got his big break early on in his career, starring in a massively successful fantasy franchise and made boatloads of money out of it. He then faced a basic choice: continue being a star in Hollywood or retire with his fuck you money and never do anything else in his life. He chose neither and instead decided to devote his time starring in weird indie movies that often have no chance of ever being financial successes. Hell, they often have no chance of being financed in the first place, of being made. But because of his interest in them, because of his name being attached, they do gain traction and they do get money to be made. But he doesn't really care about the eventual success because he doesn't have to. He no longer stars in projects that are safe in any way. He just does whatever seems fun and interesting at the time for him. Very much the same way that the careers of Robert Pattinson and Elijah Wood have gone. All three of them are in that wonderful spot where they can pick and choose their movies now. And pretty much for all three, the rule so far has been that regardless of the eventual success and even quality of the film, it is at least guaranteed to be pretty original, and any of those three is at least guaranteed to be pretty good in it. Radcliffe's most bizarre choice so far has probably been Swiss Army Man, an indie darling where he plays a farting corpse that over the course of the film slowly gains sentience. And weirdly enough, it is a pretty good film. Now, this time Daniel has decided to one-up himself, and in Guns Akimbo, he plays Miles, a boring software developer who one day gets jumped by weird gangsters he offended online. These guys are running an underground fight club where they force people to duel to the death out there in the real world. Miles wakes up with two guns in his hands that he cannot drop or remove because they have been literally drilled into his hands and fingers. And minutes later, he finds himself hunted by a girl called Nyx, a psychopathic champion of that fight club. So, yes, if you remember that weird meme/image of Daniel with drilled-in guns and bathrobe and tiger slippers on his feet that was on the internet around last year, this is where it's come from. So, the premise of the film is, of course, absolutely insane. And apparently what convinced Daniel to star in it was when he was reading the script and got to a scene where his character needs to figure out how to pee with the guns in his hands without essentially shooting his dick off. That should tell you a lot about the tone. It's mostly comedic and very crass. And because of how crass it is, I didn't think it was as funny as it could have been. Most of the jokes are just characters shouting at each other and swearing, which, you know, if you're 12 years old, it's quite hilarious, but then not so much. On the other hand, there are also instances where the humor transcends that stupidity and is genuinely brilliant, like that scene where Rhys Davies shows up for 3 minutes as a homeless man and he just steals the film away. I was howling with laughter then. But comedy is not everything. The movie also has a significant amount of action, shootouts, car chases, explosions, and these parts really exemplify what kind of a film it ultimately is, and that's a B movie at best, but I would rather see a D movie, honestly. It's sort of entertaining, sort of bombastic, but also has its share of problems with the technical and budget limitations. It also doesn't help that the story itself, beyond the interesting premise, is monumentally dumb and nonsensical, and by extension so are a lot of the action scenes. I also want to say that I loved the synthwave score, but I hated the oppressive and loud soundtrack using popular songs in ways that are meant to relate to the particular scenes they're in one of the least subtle and smart ways I've seen in a long while. So it's definitely not the sort of film you would watch and marvel at the achievement that it is. I describe it more as a sort of romp that you can put on when drinking with your mates for the 4th day straight, when you want to turn off your brain completely and just watch something crazy and laugh a bit and, you know, have a good time. But don't expect a genuinely good film in any way, which is a bit of a shame because it looked quite promising and didn't really deliver much.